It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton back with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. On today's episode, we're continuing our Logistics with Purpose series, powered by our dear friends over at Vector Global Logistics. On this series, we're spotlighting leaders and organizations that all are changing the world in some way, shape, or form. So stay tuned as we look to increase your supply chain IQ. Hey, quick programming note before we introduce our co-hosts and our featured guests here today. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check us out and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. All right, welcoming in my esteemed, fearless co-hosts here today. We've got Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur and trusted advisor. Greg, how you doing?
This is a great day. When these episodes get released, it will not be known that two episodes were recorded with Enrique and his esteemed guests in one day, which is amazing. It's an inspiring day. In any day we get to do this, but two episodes in a row is fantastic.
Yeah, feels like we have gone to Baskin Robbins and ordered 2 scoops of Vector Global Logistics.
And then you go, then you go get and mow your lawn, Greg.
Yeah, that's right. I go mow my lawn.
All right.
Couldn't get any better.
So also we have Enrique Alvarez once again, Managing Director at Vector Global Logistics, as our co-host along with Greg and I today. Enrique, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Greg. It's always a pleasure being with you, and I'm very excited about this particular episode. The guest, which I'm not going to name until you do the honors this time, is a good friend of mine. So I'm excited. It should be fun, and I look forward to it.
Absolutely. So with all that said, Enrique and Jon, let's welcome in, or Enrique and Greg.
Now you're the one that did it.
We have Mr. Jon Thompson, CEO of Comunidad Connect, joining us. Jon, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. Thanks, Scott, Greg, Enrique, for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
We are too. Your ears have probably been burning a bit because as we were doing our homework and talking with Enrique, we were finding out a little bit about your background and a lot about your outstanding work you've been leading now for 13 years. So looking forward to learning a lot more about that story. But before we do, Enrique and Greg, let's get to know Jon a little bit better, and better yet, get our listeners, afford them the opportunity to get to know Jon a little better. So Jon, the proverbial opening question that we love to learn more about. Hey, tell us where you're from and give us some of those secret stories from your upbringing.
Right on. Well, thanks. As Enrique knows, I'm an ATLian through and through, born here in Atlanta in 1974. It was a time a lot of people that were thinking differently here in the South found Atlanta to be an island where they could express themselves. My parents were no different. They came from North Carolina, moved to Atlanta in the late 60s, and found a small community here called Little Five Points. It was already very eclectic. But there are a lot of, as people came into Atlanta from the South with big ideas, you'll remember that there was a lot of political activism at that time. And so a lot of the agitated, if you were, kind of congregated Atlanta around these in-town communities and began credit unions and co-ops, grocery stores, radio stations, newspapers, and around Little Five Points in Cannon Park. And I grew up in all of that. And it was as I get older, I realized how much that made it a big impact on me. So I grew up here in Atlanta. I'm now back in Atlanta after a number of years in Nicaragua, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But here, growing up in the South, in particular in a city like Atlanta, was just a blessing, and I'm very lucky to do so. Went to public school here, and then went on to private school in high school, and then went off to college in Kentucky in a Division III school called Center College. I played soccer there. Yeah.
You played soccer.
I met Enrique.
You played soccer at Center College in Kentucky. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
What position on the field?
Striker. I like to score the goals.
Really?
He still does.
You break any records up in Kentucky?
Absolutely not. No, I was average at best, but it was a great school. Little did I know it was known to be the Harvard of the South. I realized that when I found it to be very difficult. It was also in a dry county. Didn't know that it even existed. But no, it was a great experience, and soccer was a big part of my life. And afterwards, it's when I came back to Atlanta, played in an adult league with some friends, and met Enrique. That's where we met. That must have been back in early 2000s.
And you're a big Atlanta United fan, I believe, right?
Huge,
massive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Massive.
And real quick, before I want to talk a little bit more about your professional journey, kind of some of those key roles that kind of help shape your worldview. But before we get there, you really were talking earlier about Little 5 Points and how eclectic it is, that area, and really by extension, the Atlanta area, how it can really stand out in the Southeast. Why is diversity of thought and a diversity of perspective so important in your view?
Well, I have a lot of cliches I could throw out there, diversity is the spice of life and whatnot. But I'm a true believer in collaboration, co-creation of initiatives and ideas. And that has you'll see that in a lot of my work. And I think that the world is a very boring place when we all look the same, we all sound the same, we say the same things. And as we have a chance to learn from others, we also have a chance to teach others. So that exchange has been huge. I think for me, my mom was a teacher. My dad was, he was assistant director of community development for DeKalb County, one of the largest counties in Georgia. And so I just kind of grew up around people of different colors and backgrounds. My church was a very small church, part of an underground railroad for refugees coming through Central America, and so I think I drank that Kool-Aid by the buckets, and it's just kind of in my DNA now.
Yep. Excellent. All right. So let's talk about your professional journey a bit. And I know you've been leading the calls at your organization now for 13 years, but prior to that, and you may be as young as you are, there might not be a whole bunch prior to that, but what helped shape your ability to move into, the role that you're in now?
So it actually all started with a surf trip. I mean, it doesn't sound very much like a professional journey, but after I graduated college in '97 and went on a road trip through Mexico and Central America in 1998. And that's really when my eyes became wide open to the fact that there are other people in this world living in much different ways than I was, and speaking a different language. I mean, I just was so naive, and I didn't really realize that until I got out of the United States and saw what other people were going through. And so as we went through Mexico, we were surfing, so we were on the Pacific coast of Baja, and from Mazatlan all the way down to the Guatemalan border. And I saw a lot of different iterations of tourism, a lot of different iterations of community. And when I got to Nicaragua 6 months later, I recognized that in 1998, Nicaragua was on the cusp of a tourism boom. Foreign investment was huge. And I didn't want to just sit by. I want to participate. Now, I didn't have any money. I don't come from money. I'm not an investor, but I wanted to be involved in what I saw as a beautiful small community on the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, on the cusp of something huge, and they had no idea what was coming. And so I went back to Atlanta and got my master's of social work at Georgia State University with a specialization or a focus area in community development as opposed to the clinical side. And so instead of sitting down one-on-one with a client or a patient, I was sitting down with a community, and I learned how to ask the right questions. I learned how to listen in the right ways. And those community partnerships, that experience in creating and developing those partnerships really led me into a career of social work, but in a community development kind of lens, if you will.
Yeah. Interesting. As I look back And Greg, as we've asked that question about professional journey through almost 400 shows now, I can tell you that this is very unique because no one's ever said, well, it started with a surf trip. But it makes so much sense, Jon. I mean, it makes so much sense. You know, we all have our blind spots based on our lifetime experiences and where that journey takes us. And I think it's a beautiful story of how you go down there for a completely different reason. And it opens up your eyes to a lot of other like meaningful, life-changing experiences. I love it. Greg, what your thought?
That was exactly my thought. How many people's career journey starts with, it all started with a surf trip. Made me think of a friend of mine who intended to remodel his house and wound up tearing it down and building another one. And the story starts with, it all started with this couch. I mean, right? I mean, the most unexpected result from the most mundane or tiny sort of kernel, right? So that's amazing. I have to ask you, aside from the inspiration and that is behind you is a picture of your land, I think, right, in Nicaragua?
Yeah, this is a coffee farm in the mountains of Nicaragua behind me.
So aside from that, where were the best waves for surfing on your trip?
Yeah, not many waves here up on the lake. We were the best waves. You know, Nicaragua has, I think, 3 of the top 5 waves in the world. There's a lot of reasons for that. Lake Nicaragua and the winds that come across and create an offshore, you know, wind 300 days out of the year, I think. So you get 9 months of incredible surf. So the southern Pacific coast of Nicaragua is full of incredible waves that are absolutely empty, particularly nowadays. And so, anywhere there's probably 24 coves that have 24 different types of breaks. So,
do you still get a chance to go out there and surf some of those waves when you're back in Nicaragua? Or?
Yeah, I was there in February, just before the coronavirus hit and kind of shut everything down. Yep, I was supposed to have been there 2 times since, but no, here I am, hot Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, at least you're used to the humidity in Nicaragua, right?
That's right. Well, I tell you, Nicaragua is an incredible place. It's the second poorest country in the hemisphere after Haiti. But it's beautiful. I mean, it's known as the land of lakes and volcanoes. The people are amazing. Their approach to hospitality is just incomparable to anywhere else I've ever been. I thoroughly recommend. I'm a road show promoting Nicaragua every day.
Love it. Well, Greg, I think we want to dive more into Jon's organization, Comunidad Connect, right?
Yeah. So love to understand kind of how you landed there and then what the company does. So can we start with, I'm hoping this segment also starts with, it all started with a surf trip, but if not, I won't be disappointed, Jon. So.
No, well, it does. It is a continuation, right? So picking up where I left off, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of the country's growth and the communities where I was. I wanted to contribute to their growth. So we moved. My wife is Nicaraguan. We met in 2000. We met in 1999, and we got married here in Atlanta. After I got my MSW, I went to work for United Way for a little while. But I was looking at this panoramic picture of the Pacific Coast of Nicaragua every day in my little cubicle, and I was like, I could do this work here in Atlanta, or I could do it in front of the beach. Why don't we go back to Nicaragua? My wife was like, my whole life I'm trying to get out of Nicaragua. You want to go back? But bless her heart, she followed me. I don't say follow me. We went down there together. We moved there in 2005 and lived there for 10 years. I didn't know it was going to be that long. But in 2007, we were seeing foreign investment through the roof. Tourism was really picking up, and we founded Comunidad Connect on the basis of, there are people who want to have a meaningful experience while they are traveling, whether on vacation with family or traveling alone on a surf trip or whatever. They want to enter into communities through the back where they don't know the language. They don't have the relationships, and they might not even have a clue what they want to do. They just want to do something meaningful. And on the other side of that equation, there were people in the community that were doing incredible work that needed support, access to capital, access to opportunities, whether they were making water filters or composting toilets that were serving the community, but they just didn't know how to interact with this wave of foreigners that had access to resources. And I found myself smack dab in the middle. I knew the language. I had by that time almost 10 years of relationships there in the community. And I had a little bit of experience with community development. So I said, why don't we, put the two puzzle pieces together, like you see on that, right?
There you
Where
go.
we have a community that wants to do good, and on the other side, communities that need that support. Well, we put them together like puzzle pieces. And so Comunidad Connect is just that. It's connecting communities. Half of it's in Spanish, half of it's in English. And I'm happiest when I find myself at the intersections of people who want to make a difference, and I connect them with opportunities to do so. And that's the crux of Comunidad Connect, and a bit of the ethos story as well.
Hey, real quick side note, and we'll delete this. Jon, we've got a weak connection on your end, I believe. It's that 80-20 rule. We can hear about 80%, but you drop out a little bit. I just want to call it out. We hate doing retakes, so we want to protect your time. But worst case, I think we keep driving unless there's you can plug in an Ethernet connection. I'm not sure if you can or not. You may be completely Wi-Fi, and that's fine. Greg?
Or make sure your kids aren't playing Fortnite.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something. Let me go shut my son down real quick. I'm sure he's on his computer next door.
That's what we do all the time.
We should have warned him, right? That should just be that should just be in our preparatory document.
Yes.
Get your kids off Fortnite.
Yeah, that's probably a good side note from the introduction.
Yeah.
I have to kick my kids off and make them angry on a daily basis, just about.
We upped our bandwidth, and as it turns out, it cost us nothing extra. They've been charging us the 600 megabits rate for 4 or 3 or whatever we were actually getting.
Yeah.
But with cable, you're not guaranteed the speed anyway. So, and we're at the end of the street. So everyone up the street takes a little bit of bandwidth before it gets to us.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't know that's the way it worked.
Yeah.
But
news to me.
All cable is shared bandwidth. That is why things.
So you got to be the first one gets better signal?
Well, you got to be closest to wherever the signal comes from. Yeah.
I didn't know
that helps. But that's why fiber and.
Mine is terrible at my house.
Is it?
Well, it's pretty bad here too, but.
Yeah. If it's cable, it's always shared.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Was he winning is the question, Jon.
He was not. He wasn't even on it, but I told him to get off the phone. I have a pretty good signal, like almost 400.
Well, it was fine right up until we started recording, right? And then it seemed like it dropped out. But it is that time of day where all of your neighbors are finally out of bed, right? Well, so if you have cable internet, they're stealing a little bit of your bandwidth. And
that's the beauty of a recording too. I mean, again, we want to protect your time, but we'll just keep driving. And based on what Chris and our engineer says, if we have to, we might could do it. We might could do any re-recording in person, but we're getting most.
We're getting most of it.
Yeah. Well, and Zoom should be picking up your recording on your end and then feeding it to us. Yeah. So, meaning before it gets dropped through the internet. So it may sound better in recording than it does to us.
Yep. So picking right back up.
Yeah, you guys are going in and out on my end too. So I mean, again, I can get 85%, but
okay. So Greg,
I can repeat anything you want.
No.
You're good.
I think where we kind of left it off is Greg. Jon kind of gave a sense of the organization, and you were going to either do a follow-up question or move into where he spends his time. But I'll let you take it from here. Clean break. Where's my clapper? Clean break. All right, back to the conversation.
So Jon, Look, the title of CEO, everyone here has been a company leader, right? So the title of CEO is beautiful and it looks great on a business card, but sometimes it doesn't represent what people would expect your job to be or the totality of what you do. And I sense in an organization like yours, that's probably true for you too. So tell us what you really do on a day-to-day basis, the kind of things that you do and interactions you have and that kind of thing.
Well, we've always said that our capacity to make a difference is directly linked to the engagement and the size of our community here. And so for probably the first 8 years of my work with Comunidad Connect, I was developing programs, managing staff. I was in country. And so it was what I love to do most, the grassroots work. We focus on community health. We run a health clinic. We provide a continuum of care for special needs patients. We support local health promoters in Nicaragua, as well as in the Dominican Republic now. We build homes. We distribute water filters. We have a youth sports program that has 1,000 kids. I mean, it's very robust with a very small team. And that's where I'm happiest, kind of on the ground, getting my feet dirty, my hands dirty. Moving to the United States, what I do now, I've been back here for about 3 years. It's my business card should really be storyteller, because the questions that you all are asking me, I get often, and I do like sharing my story with others because it's not the typical route to become CEO of a for-profit or nonprofit. What I do now is I share the work. A lot of my time is spent on marketing, communications. Certainly now with coronavirus, we've been working on transitioning our in-person events over to virtual events. We've launched a podcast. It's a lot of time in studio, which is my home office. So it's that's really how I'm spending a lot of my time, and that's another way of saying fundraising. Because without fundraising, we can't make, obviously we can't do anything. And half of our budget, half of our operating revenue in the past came from hosting groups of students and faith-based groups in country to join us in the work. And we use that revenue to drive programs. But without the ability to travel and take volunteers abroad, it all comes down to the generosity of our donor network. So that's where I spend all my time now.
So, okay, a quick follow-up on that. I'm curious what that fundraising donor relationship looks like now in today's environment. And I only feel free to ask you such a complex question because Enrique told us we can ask you anything. So I wonder what that looks like in this day and age.
We are about what that relationship looks like. It's everybody's different, and everybody's capacity to give is different. Some people give from abundance. Some people give because of their commitment to cause. Some people support our work because they're my childhood friend and they know me personally. And they say, well, if JT's in, then I'm in too. So there's no approach that works the same for everybody, or a relationship that is, not unique. But the most important thing about fundraising in this day and age is being genuine and being authentic and being humble when you meet someone new, and being thoughtful when you're with someone you've known a lifetime. Because the last thing you want is someone to think, wow, he is just reaching out to me because he wants my money. We look at our organization is very people-centered, and that's the same kind of spirit that we bring to all facets of the work, whether it's our Grow for Good program that provides meals to senior citizens living alone in rural communities, or it's with a major donor. It has to be based on very strong, very genuine relationships.
So has it been harder because you can't get people there in person, or have you changed your approach substantially? Because you said it's very people focused, right? So that, obviously, I think we're all adapting to Zoom meetings, right?
That's right.
But is there some way you've changed your approach because of that?
A little bit, yeah. So we started a podcast, much like this. We're bringing our team that's in the field, Nicaragua, trying to bring them more to the forefront. Language is always a barrier, so that doesn't always work. Our biggest challenge since day one is trying to explain the impact and really in tangible ways when people aren't able to go to Nicaragua or to the Dominican Republic where we've begun to do work. It's a big challenge, and this has forced us to re-engineer a lot of that exposure to the need, exposure to the opportunity, and try to do that virtually. And so we're now developing, for example, since schools can't join us in country, we're bringing the country to them in the classroom with like Google Earth flight simulators, actually taking off from Atlanta Airport over the Caribbean, landing in Managua, kind of getting like a hot air balloon and going into the community where we work, then getting down into, that's kind of like the grass tops. Then we get into grassroots where we can actually have Zoom meetings with our nurse in the clinic or our field staff that's building homes or local leaders that we work with. So it's forced us to exercise our creativity in ways we had never really done before. We knew that we always need to innovate, but this has really forced that innovation, fast forward. So, we'll see. So far, I think our virtual events have actually been able to engage more people in more ways than an in-person event ever could. Wow. So, yeah, I'm optimistic.
If I can ask a quick question, Greg, before you continue.
Yeah.
All right. I could just, Jon, you paint a wonderful picture, and maybe it's part of your backdrop, and it's a lot of the words you use, but you really, it's easy to see how you're a great storyteller as part of your role. So I envision all the stuff you need from the sports programs to all the other services and support you offer the Central American community and beyond. How do you get all that stuff down there? Give us a snapshot of the logistics behind that.
Well, we try as much as we can to inject our resources in the local economy. So whatever we can buy, like it doesn't make sense for us to bring down a bunch of medical supplies when we can buy them from the mom and pop's pharmacy around the corner. So, and sending money is a lot easier than getting medical supplies through customs, believe me. Through the sports program, for example, we built a sports facility, kind of renovated an old tennis court into a basketball, in soccer, or arena soccer and volleyball court. And there's an ex-NBA player that has a house in this community. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, can you help us get some backboards? And so he reached out to his past organizations, which is the Lakers and the Knicks, got the Knicks to donate two full sets of basketball goals, had them shipped down through the mayor's son was in a major hardware store, a chain in Nicaragua, got them to do the import-export tax-free because it was through the government, through the mayor's office, and then delivered to us. So the level of ingenuity in Nicaragua is awesome. With a little bit of duct tape and some elbow grease, you can fix anything, right? And so what I found is that the supply chain to get things there is not as difficult as you may think at first glance. But certainly we try to supply our programs with the resources they need with local resources.
I love that.
That's much.
I love that. You're investing on so many different levels. I love that localization. All right, Greg. Sorry.
No, I mean, think about this. Supply chain started very locally, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it started with us feeding ourselves.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. If you think about it, that's where the supply chain really started. And then we had more like we do this year, more squash and tomatoes than we could eat. So we took them to the neighbors or whatever, right? I mean, it starts very simply and it starts very locally. And I think it's good that you're contributing so much to the economy that you're trying to help. So that's fantastic.
Well, I think just being intentional about the way we spend our money is more important nowadays than ever before. So I'm glad that shines through our work.
So can you name the NBA player? I bet we're all dying to know who the heck that is.
Well, I will. He's a friend. He's been a great supporter of Comunidad Connect for many years. It's Travis Knight, and he has had a home in the town where my wife is from and where we found in Nicaragua on the coast of on the Pacific coast there. And we stay in touch throughout the year. And again, if he listens, a big shout out to Travis Knight. He's a great man. He was a great player.
Yeah.
And he's a good friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to get people like that involved. They have so much power, right? I mean, and it's encouraging when they help leverage that power and knowledge and awareness into something great like this.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
So I want to ask you about Eureka Moments, but man, I think you've shared a couple here. So is there anything else that has given you that sort of aha moment that has, lit your fuse more than any of the other things that you've described here already?
Well, I'll give you two brief examples. I was working in a community. I was working for a development doing the corporate social responsibility work, and it was from one of the most influential and powerful families in Nicaragua. And I was charged with managing the community relationships around their development. And there were 7 different communities, 3 different health centers. And when I saw the health centers and I went to go visit and I spoke with the staff, they were clogged with people every day, women and children primarily, that had diarrhea and upper respiratory illnesses. And they couldn't do anything else. They couldn't get out in the community because they were attending so many people in their clinics. Well, that diarrhea and the upper respiratory illnesses are very preventable illnesses. With access to clean water, you don't clear it up 100%, but that's huge. Washing hands and drinking clean water. Chronic diarrhea was the #1 killer for babies under 5 years old throughout the developing world.
Right.
And with a water filter that costs $30, you can make a big dent in that. With a stove that funnels the smoke out of the roof and doesn't fill the house with wood smoke, you can cut down on that upper respiratory illness in big ways. And so that drove me to think, okay, well, how can we put 2 and 2 together? And next thing you know, within 5 years, we got 10,000 people with clean water through water filters. They were buying with community service. They volunteered 2 days in a row doing work to improve their community, and we recognize that with a filter. We weren't just parachuting in, handing out filters, taking a picture and walking away. These were people earning them through their civic engagement. And that was just how someone's time can be the most valuable currency. That was an aha moment for me.
Wow.
And the second one started, it was 2 years ago in 2018. There was a lot of social unrest in Nicaragua. It's political instability, and it was a very disturbing time. And people, widespread unemployment, people didn't have access to food. So we started, like my staff said, we have to get food to these people who are elderly, living alone, or special needs, and they can't cook for themselves. And so we started doing things that I never wanted to do ever, and that's hand things out and provide a meal. Even though it was good nourishment, it was still a handout. And that was just something that we did not want to do. So today we have acres of corn and acres of beans planted in the grounds because we've begun to finance those local farmers, giving them loans at reasonable interest rates so that they can grow their own food. And then with the surplus, like your squash and tomatoes, then they can they can take care of their neighbors in ways they couldn't before because they didn't have the money because of the jobs. And this is an investment of $2,000. $2,000 can put 14 acres of corn in the ground that provide food for 40 people year round, plus a couple $1,000s in their pocket, which is the equivalent of an annual salary. So again, just very simple things. Once they come together in my little head, they can cause a reaction that now hopefully will serve thousands and thousands of people.
Butterfly effect. That's great. Well, okay, now Scott, I feel like maybe you and I ought to just sit and watch. Yeah. So let's turn Enrique loose. And I know you and Jon are great friends, and I know you're a big fan of what he's doing at Comunidad Connect. So share with us a little bit about what's so inspiring about this for you and why you wanted to share this story with us.
Yeah, no, one of the main reasons I wanted to share this story was Jon himself. I mean, I'm sure that everyone's listening by now knows the kind of person or has a really good idea of what kind of person Jon is. And it's, we're good friends. We don't get a chance to hang out as much as we would like to, mainly because he doesn't want to play soccer with us anymore, but that's a different story.
Well, you kick me in the shins every time I get out there.
So. But no, I admire what he's done, and what he's a straightforward, honest, hardworking, passionate person. And again, anyone that would start a story like, hey, it started on a surf trip and then goes on to see that something's wrong in the world or the place that he was. And then instead of just going back and ignoring it, like he actually takes the time and builds a company and changes his life around that particular moment. I think it's just admirable and worth sharing. And again, part of the series that we have here with you guys, Greg and Scott, is sharing inspirational stories so that other people could kind of learn and follow the footsteps of good leaders. And so Jon, I respect you as a leader and glad that you're my friend. And so congratulations, because what you've done, even inside Comunidad Connect, because when we started talking about this years and years ago, it was only or mainly the students going into and the coffee, right? And I don't know, you haven't mentioned the coffee, but one question I had for you is how do you start growing into all these other aspects, like the sports complex and the kids and the health and the food? And I mean, what's your strategy into growing something that I think, and I might be wrong here, started maybe at the coffee? Where did it start, and how do you grow it to all these other programs?
Well, around the same time in 2007, when we founded Comunidad Connect, I was also invited to be part of a coffee farm, and that's pictured behind me. I had no money. So I told my friend who was putting it all together, I said, I mean, I want to be involved, but I don't know what I can do. He said, well, I want you to be involved in the community level because, it's a 250-acre farm. It's the largest organic coffee farm in Nicaragua. We're going to make a splash. And if you could help us manage the community relations, that'd be great. And so that's how I got involved in the coffee farm. And it just so happened that in that community called Los Robles, just outside the city of Jinotega on Lake Apanas, there was a vibrant community of engaged leaders. And after a year or two of saying, no, we can't put a roof on the school, we can't give the computers, or the church needs new pews, we can't do everything. We took that time and developed relationships and really built trust. I really believe that change really happens at the speed of trust. And until you have that trust, it takes time to build, but once you have it, you're locked in and you can do some amazing things. So as I developed some relationships with the coffee farmers within the community and also in partnership, very important to point out, there was a very strong relationship with Emory University's business school, social enterprise. The Center for Social Enterprise at Goizueta at Emory was a very important partner in the beginning of Comunidad Connect and helped open our eyes to the fact that coffee is a product, the highest traded commodity in the world after oil. Yet the countries that base their GDP on coffee production are some of the poorest in the entire world. So we saw a huge discrepancy there about a coffee that cost $3.50 a cup at Starbucks was less than $1 a pound for the farmers. And they just didn't have access to the markets. And
Right.
so we were able to kind of understand, well, wow, there's a really valuable resource here. How can we bring that to market? Much like we saw the community as an incredible place for research, an incredible place for program development, but we had to plug it into communities that have resources that could kind of get some programs up and running. And so the more we, scratch the surface, the more the onions, the layers of the onions we peeled back, it got stinky, but we also got stinky with promise. And so we were able to develop a coffee program called Farmers to 40 that paid the farmers based on the price of coffee that consumers were paying, not on the commodity price that's really manipulated more by futures and hedge funds than the reality in Nicaragua.
Mm. Wow. So a different spin on Enrique's question to you, as we go broader, Jon. Enrique was also curious as we were chatting pre-show about some other things you're tracking across the global community, right? Right, Enrique?
Yes. No. So, I mean, again, challenging times or interesting times. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities that we can extract from this, and I'm pretty sure that us as human beings are going to learn a lot from going through this worldwide pandemic. But what are you kind of like? You talked a little bit about the marketing and some of the funding and how that has changed. But what other kind of indicators are you currently tracking that would impact your organization, and what do you keep an eye on?
Well, right now there's more than anything we're keeping an eye on COVID and 19 in Nicaragua. Nicaragua was one of the only countries in the world that did not establish social distancing. It actually mandated school. They held big rallies. There were no precautions put into place. Medical professionals were not allowed to wear masks for the first 6 weeks. And now we are seeing a widespread explosion of coronavirus in Nicaragua. Yesterday, one of my staff tested positive. There are people in very rural communities now that are testing positive. And so it's a very, my focus, I guess my metric is a human metric right now. And it's a concern I think we all feel, but certainly I think it's magnified quite a bit in countries like Nicaragua. Certainly we are looking, we want to travel there again. We want to begin our work, I guess, via what we call our Cultural Connections program, when we take academic groups and faith-based groups, even birding groups and corporate groups to Nicaragua and the DR. And we will, we track our success there, not only in how many people we can bring down, how much money we can raise doing so, but impact we can have by engaging and deploying those capital investments that come from that side of the business. But right now it's really tough because we can't travel. But I think there's promise that we'll be able to get down there soon, and hopefully virtually we can bring that experience into the classroom.
Governments have changed their stance on how to fight the virus, and is there anything that we or the listeners can do to kind of help this particular concern of yours and help people in Nicaragua kind of battle through the virus?
Certainly. Well, yeah, and the government has now accepted the fact that there is coronavirus. There's no denying that. It's a little late, but they are making some strides in that regard, in supporting their medical staff and so forth. What we found, the best way that we can help is working directly with communities. If they don't have jobs, there's really widespread unemployment. The economy was in collapse before coronavirus. So by supporting our work to get food on the tables of families that need it the most, to give safe shelter for the families that might be living on a dirt floor or have a plastic tarp as their roof, as many do in the communities where we work. Helping out with our medical programs to provide this continuum of care with medicine and home visits and trips to visits to specialists. I mean, $5 goes a very long way in Nicaragua. And right now we're recruiting recurring supporters of our work, $5, $10, $20 a month. I can't tell you how much impact that makes. Just yesterday we highlighted a young man who came as a volunteer in 2014 and started a $15 a month donation when he got home. He's since made 80 contributions, and it is, it's just amazing that through that small gift every month, that's 50 cents a day, so much help can be afforded, so much impact can be made. And so I think that if people want to get involved, just understand that it's very easy to do so. There's no reason why you can't. We're a very small organization. There's not a lot of overhead. And all of the dollars that we raise that are earmarked for programs go 100% to programs. And so I just encourage people to visit us on our website, comunidadconnect.org. We're also very active on Facebook and Instagram, and our podcast, The Connection, also has episodes every week, as well as Facebook Live events. We're big music fans, so if you like our music, then spread the word. So we always say, look, you can share our story, come and volunteer, or make a donation. There's 3 great ways to get involved.
Outstanding. Who's your favorite music group, by the way? You got to pick one.
Ooh, right now, I'm a big salsa fan, and so I would say Eddie Palmieri is my on heavy rotation. So okay. Eddie Palmieri, great piano, salsa.
He's a great dancer too, by the way.
Really? We're gonna have to check that one out. Greg's a big dancer on our team, right?
It's hard to be down when you're listening to salsa.
That's right.
That's right. Wholeheartedly agree.
All right, so appreciate you sharing how folks can connect. Of course, we're going to share all those links, a lot of those links, at least in the show notes. Hey, Jon, got one final question before we wrap up. I like your down-to-earth leadership style and just authentic approach that you bring to the table. And this is the first time we've met, heard a lot about you, but based on what you and your team have been building and the mission you've been serving and the good you've been doing, the very real, tangible good you've been doing, speak to those aspiring leaders, whether they're still in school, whether they're early in their career. What makes it happen from a leadership standpoint?
Well, for me, it kind of goes against the grain to say that my career has been driven not by money. It has been 100% based on my values. And when I speak with young professionals, whether out of school or in school still, I urge them to reflect first and find work that speaks to what makes them happy. Because when I talk to the old timers and I listen to what they really, when they look you in the eye and say, son, happiness is worth more than money. And you have to balance that, right? Because you got to have money to put food on the table. But I go to bed every night happy and satisfied because I know my work is making a difference in the lives of others. And if I can make a living doing that, then I want that to be an inspiration for other people that, well, maybe I don't have to go down the traditional route. And maybe I don't have to climb that corporate ladder to be happy, because really, what is happiness at the end of the day?
Love that. Greg, Enrique, a lot there. We could have dove into that last segment, I think, a couple hours. But Greg, your key takeaway or your final thought with Jon?
One, surfers save the world. And two, that last statement reminds me of the parable of the Big Six consultant and the Mexican fisherman. I'd encourage people to look that up, read through it. It is an inspiration for your life, and it does give you a clarity of direction in that regard. And second, and in addition to that, I'd say kudos, frankly, to your wife for allowing you to do this and participating with you in it and allowing you to spend some time in country. I mean, we have talked to Tanya Allen from Venezuela and a number of folks who have left their home country and they are loath to go back. So we know what a difficult decision that is to make. So, congrats to her and her part in participating in this. And of course to you and the team. And I hope you guys get down there again soon.
Definitely. Good. Well put there, Greg.
We should all go, Greg.
Yes.
We should.
We can all have like a little trip down to Nicaragua.
Yeah.
So I have some friends who are from there as well. And maybe we could
be a good retreat for supply chain.
Yeah.
Go.
And have a
waves, do some good.
And have a salsa contest while we're down there.
Hey, we're from Georgia, man. We have no problems with a blue roof.
I'm with you.
Blue tarp roof is like a natural thing in Georgia.
That's all we need.
All right, Enrique, your final thought as we wrap up here with Jon.
No, it's been just a pleasure having him on the show. I'm sure we're going to have him again once we reopen and after maybe his first trip, maybe we can think of something even remotely while he's down in Nicaragua. But no, thanks, Jon, for everything you do. Again, wish we could hang out more often, but thank you very much for just leading with the example and yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah,
well put. All right, Jon, folks can learn more. I think we're going to include your LinkedIn profile. We're going to include your URL, which is comunidadconnect.org. And we encourage our listeners to reach out. As Jon put it out there, it's really easy to plug in and help the mission that you and your organization are on. So big thanks to Jon Thompson, CEO at Comunidad Connect. Thanks so much, Jon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Big thanks also, once again, to Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur, a regular co-host here. In fact, host of the new show, which is getting rave reviews across the world, Greg.
Across the world,
Sunrise. Huh? That's right. Hey, you got to go big or stay home, right?
Yeah, that's right. I guess so.
And, of course, we couldn't make this series. It wouldn't be possible without the great team over at Vector Global Logistics. Enrique Alvarez, you and your team are inspirations in your own right, and we appreciate how you bring these stories like Jon's here and his organization and give it our little spotlight that we've been growing here, because they're stories that need to be heard and they're missions that folks can get on board and really help make an impact.
Thank you. And thank you, Scott and Greg, for allowing people to come and share their stories, share their experiences. And hopefully by just increasing the awareness and just sharing the story, as Jon was saying, you're also making a big change in the world. So thanks for what you do at Supply Chain Now.
You bet. We'd love to do it. All right. So to our audience, what was that, Greg? Go ahead.
Our pleasure.
Okay. I was trying to give you a pregnant pause there.
Sorry.
Hey, to our audience, hopefully you've enjoyed this story as much as we have. There's nothing, as I look at all the shows that we've had here, some of my favorites are shows just like this, where you've got passionate leaders on a mission that are doing big things, and it's like a calling. And it's a real tangible, practical impact in other parts of the world. Folks that, as Jon laid out, folks that need it. Like Nicaragua being one of the, I think the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, I think is what Jon shared. Let's get out there and make a difference. So on that note, hopefully you enjoyed the show. We challenge you, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.